Salvage, a story by user Rantarian. Chapter 19, Rogue Elements. Trichlor and Chir touched down on the flight deck of the Zottersil. With the exception of 3 of the other hunter craft being missing, there were no changes to anything that they could see at least. The sweep they had performed around the outside, however, had revealed a single hunter vessel lodged in the broken cavity on the hull, so that at least explained one of the missing craft.
I suspect he used the conduits exposed in the wreckage to power the FTL,
Trichlor explained as they drifted past, illuminating the larger ship with the woefully inadequate lights on their own vessel.
I'm ashamed for not thinking of it.
It doesn't seem to have worked very well if this is where he ended up, Chir had replied. He'd been agitated since they'd discovered that the Zottersil was sitting at the edge of the warfront, although hopefully, simply removing it from the AFRAG system will be enough for now. There was air on the flight deck at least, and minor signs of recent activity that encouraged Trichlor to believe that Adrian was still alive and still in residence.
If we had stayed, we might have prevented the ship from ending up here,
she said as they disembarked.
But it all seemed so hopeless at the time.
We are not to blame for seeing this as a hopeless case, Chir replied. It remains a hopeless case. Using other ships to provide it with power? It's like trying to breathe life into a corpse.
Stop,
Trichlor said, holding up her hand as they reached the flight deck equipment store they'd left in place for convenience. Something seemed off. Things seemed cleaner.
Does this place look as though it's been cleaned?
It's hard to imagine Adrian doing that, Chir replied. But I imagine even a Deathworlder has a tolerance limit for filth. A sound from behind the equipment crates gave them pause, and they each had a hand on their kinetic pulse guns. If it were Adrian, it would hardly bother him, but if it was something else, it was always good to be certain. Come out from there, Chir said cautiously, training his weapon on the crate. He fired a round at it, making it shake violently, and eliciting a surprised yelp from whatever was behind it. Definitely not Adrian, to make a sound like that. Now!
Please!
Came the voice, female, soft and lyrical. Chir recognized the sounds as similar to Adrian's, but without the harshness to every sound.
Please don't shoot me. Come out,
Trichlor demanded, although she was starting to get a very bad feeling about this situation.
Slowly.
A mop handle waved above the crate, twirling back and forth in some sort of weird display.
I surrender. Please don't shoot me,
the voice said again, filled with genuine fear.
Just come out,
Trichlor said, more softly now.
We won't hurt you.
The creature behind the crate appeared to respond to this, and a red-haired head appeared from behind it. Trichlor's breath caught as she saw it. A human face, much softer and with different colorations than Adrian's, but definitely a human face. Trichlor, Chir said with concern. Tell me that humans do not self-replicate?
They're bi-gendered,
Trichlor told him.
I think this is a female.
Do you think it's weaker? Chir asked, his gun still trained on what they guessed was a human female. Does it even understand us? Trichlor peered at the human.
If she does, she's not showing any signs of it, and all I can say is that she is clearly smaller and less robust than Adrian. It's definitely weaker.
Chir glanced at Trichlor. Then what should we do? If Adrian has taken this one as a mate, he would not be pleased if we were to subdue her. Trichlor's gaze hardened at the thought of that possibility. Of course she didn't think of Adrian as a potential mate for herself. He wasn't a Ruhr after all. If he had been, that would have been an entirely different story. But as it stood, she had almost regarded him as an incredibly dangerous, wonderfully insane older brother.
Do you think she is?
Jennifer Delaney, mid-20s, alone on a dinosaur spaceship and held captive by a freakish raccoon man and its bat creature associate. Today was not turning out so well. She hoped that Adrian would be back soon. She didn't doubt that he would crush these two with his bare hands if he needed to, but she did consider that she might be held hostage at gunpoint, and then he'd be forced to surrender on her account. They'd be thrown into a cell together and forced to share that narrow bed. She was getting off track. Raccoon, bat, prisoner. That's what she needed to remember. Right now, they'd managed to get her to sit somewhere comfortable while they pointed guns at her. It was clear to her from their agitation that they had not expected to find somebody here, and from the way they seemed to respond when she talked, it was like they could understand her even if the reverse was not true. She decided to test it.
You should both leave, she said. My boyfriend will be back soon, and he's got a mean right hook, so it is. He'll lay both of you out like a Sunday dinner, although come to think of it, I don't imagine you have any Sundays, do you?
They appeared to grow puzzled, and then concerned. They talked to each other a bit more,
Okay, so that didn't improve anything, Jen said to herself. Maybe if I started to talk about weapons. Wait, shouldn't the automated defense spider have killed you both by now? She glanced over at the robot that continued to scan the flight deck with its single eye. Admittedly, if it had attacked the two creatures now, she would have copped a face full of ball bearings along with them. But surely it should have killed them almost as soon as they had landed, unless Adrian's programming skills were as poor as she had suspected. Or unless these two had foreseen the trap and had taken control of the robot. The aliens had taken on a wary nature, glancing at the various defenses in case they were to unexpectedly spring to life. If only they would, she lamented. Then I wouldn't need to wait for that ape of a man. He can't go rescuing me every time there's a problem, you know. Even Disney princesses only need to be rescued once, although I'll admit that this is more interesting than starving to death. Have you ever experienced starvation? It's like hunger, but worse. The raccoon seemed markedly more agitated at this point and fired his gun meaningfully into the air. Well, she said, I guess I'll be quiet then.
Shopping trolley. This is the shopping trolley to the Dominion cruiser in orbit, Adrian said over the communicator. His scans showed them still in orbit, but they'd been remarkably pig-headed about connecting the link once he declared himself as a human. Look, he said, tired of the silence. I have 10 of your men here, and if you want them back, you're fucking well going to agree to a trade. He waited for the response again. The Ricky-Lickies had been greatly displeased by the discovery that he intended to shoot their landing craft at the mothership. That hadn't stopped them from being extremely obedient when faced with sudden, overwhelming violence. He had been pleased to discover that the away team had shared a similar attitude. They were all in the shopping trolley's holding cell awaiting a response from the ship above, apparently called the Itras. They were compliant prisoners. He had to give them that. Had he been in their shoes, he'd have had to be dragged kicking and screaming into the cell. It had been a little disappointing that they hadn't done that. Itras, you fuckers! More forcefully this time. He was losing his patience. Pick up, or you're going to have a new problem. There was again no answer. He sighed and initiated launch. New problem it is. Dominion cruiser Itras, geosynchronous orbit of Deathworld. We do not make deals with rogue elements, Clicklet said, although having discovered that the rogue element was a human and holding all 10 of their men, or so he claimed, had altered things a bit, but raised a number of questions as a result, such as why a human was flying a hunter ship, and why he had attacked a Dominion cruiser without provocation. All 10 of our men are alive down there, Durzik protested. We can't just leave them there. We have no way of knowing if they're actually alive, Clicklet said, or that it intends to keep them that way if they are. Humans are obscenely dangerous, remember? They wouldn't have been sealed into their home system if they weren't. This one hasn't been sealed anywhere, Durzik pointed out bitterly. Where is that FTL? Clicklets demanded, ignoring Durzik's unproductive whining. Damage was suffered on the relays, his subordinate advised him. Secondary conduits cannot carry that much power. We'll need to hurry repairs to get it working again. Then hurry them, snapped Clicklets. Sometimes it seemed as though he always had to think of everything, even when he hadn't assumed command. Perhaps especially then. Sir, said the same subordinate. I said hurry them, screamed Clicklets, his temper snapping under stress. The subordinate recoiled. But, sir, a ship has just docked. Adrian stepped off the hunter ship into the weak atmosphere aboard the ship. This was what the vacuum suit was for. The heavily armed response team was what his gun was for. Exploding rounds were evidently a new development for them, because the survivors surrendered immediately after their commanding officer had been reduced to chunky salsa and sprayed all over them. He couldn't fault them for logic, at least, although they remained equal parts angry, humiliated, and terrified. When they looked at him, he could see it in their eyes. That pants-shitting terror that fucked a man up for life. You guys just need some fucking cement in your wheat bix, he told them, knowing the entirety of it would be completely meaningless to them. For now, take me to your doctors. Report from docking area, sir, the subordinate said, reading directly from the console. About the human, sir. Of course it's about the human, Clicklet snapped. Let me guess, he's headed straight here. We're about to have a confrontation with the kind of psychopath who shoots ships at other ships. No, sir, the subordinate replied, his obvious confusion mounting. He's left. Clicklets was confused as well now. What? What about taking over our ship? It seems like he just came to abduct our doctors, the subordinate said. He even returned our 10 away team members, although that still leaves 27 dead from the impact and further combat. Well, Durzik interjected. At least my son is all right. Shopping trolley. Mission success, Adrian said as he activated the FTL, for a given value of success. It was true that the original intent of the mission had been to go and get some food and connect with any ship that might have a medical officer. But, he reasoned, it was common knowledge that no plan survived contact with the enemy. Lacking a missile, he had decided to see if firing a landing craft at its mothership would have had the desired outcome, and had been pleasantly surprised to discover that it very much had. He was just glad that he hadn't wiped out the medical bay in the process. Then they'd had the stubborn attitude of completely ignoring him when they'd learned he was a human. That had been somewhat insulting, but he supposed he might have had it coming at that point. He wondered if he might have just declared war on the Dominion, and then decided that as they had largely been the ones responsible for imprisoning Earth and were, in general, galactic-scale land barons, he did not care one whit what they thought of him. He was, then, in as good a mood as it was possible to be in wet, muddy clothing. That went downhill fast when he saw the unknown vessel sitting on the flight deck. His eyes swept the flight deck quickly, and saw no sign of the defense systems being at work. "What the fuck is going on here?" he asked himself aloud. It wasn't a big ship, however, and he landed the shopping trolley next to it. He figured there'd be 2 of them at most, and with his trusty rifle, he'd be able to humble the ship itself. "Let's see who you are." Readying his gun and disembarking with it raised for shooting, he stopped as he saw who was waiting for him at the bottom of the gangway. Cheer and Tricor, their guns aimed at Jen.
Adrian!
Tricor called to him urgently, surprisingly scared for being the one holding the weapon.
She can't communicate with us. I'm afraid that if we put down our guns, she'll take us apart. Adrian!
Jen called in much the same tone.
Please don't let them hurt me.
Adrian let the barrel of the rifle drop, letting himself take in the full significance of the current situation. "Oh, sweet, merciful fuck," he said under his breath. "Pardon my French." Okay, so I lied on the last one too. I did have one more for you guys today, again for being so patient. I just wanted to get this third one out of the way because we are about to head back into Shu Chang Saga. And it is, if I'm not mistaken, the last one as well, until it rejoins into the Deathworlders main sequence. I think about the time of Warhorse, which is a bit of a ways away. But we're getting through most of Salvage here. We're about to meet some good people. Lots of fun. I know I keep talking about Big Hotel. You don't know who that is yet, but you will, I promise. Anyway, guys, thank you so much again for being with me here today and spending this time with me. I really appreciate you. If you would like to continue the growth of the channel, please go ahead and click the link in the description to my Patreon. As always, if you liked it, go ahead and give it a like. If you're new here, go ahead and subscribe. You will get notified when I make new stuff. I usually do about one a day. This week has been a little weird with everything going on. If you're new here and you don't know anything about what's happening at this point, all sorts of stuff going on this week. Watch some of the other videos recently. My mom had open heart surgery, lots of crazy shit. But thank you guys again for being here. I will see you in the next one. Bye, guys.